Welcome back to another edition of Baseball for Maniacs. Continuing with the theme of players' previews for the 2026 season, we got my personal favorite, Bryce Harper. And before we get into the video where we go over his 2025 season, the playoffs, the not elite comments, all that, this, that, and the third, I hope everyone realizes what Bryce Harper has meant to this franchise. He has quite literally saved the Philadelphia Phillies franchise. We were going nowhere when he signed with us. He chose us. And then everything after that has led to this organization having numerous amounts of successful years. Now, I get it. We haven't won the ultimate prize, and that's what you do. That's why we watch every single game. That's why I do this podcast, is for eventually for us to be down Broad Street. But Bryce Harper's one player. He quite literally can't do it by himself. But I just want to show you a little picture, and I'm going to stand up and I'm going to point to it. Do you realize this moment is one of the biggest moments in Philadelphia Phillies history? I don't know if you caught that on the mic, but that is one of the biggest moments in Philadelphia Phillies history. Bryce Harper did that. Bedlam at the Bank will go down as one of the biggest moments, not only in Phillies history, but Major League Baseball history. That is just unfathomable, and he has numerous playoff moments like that. So before I get into the season preview, I just want the level of respect for Bryce Harper from the entire fan base to be how I feel, because when he came to this organization, something changed. We started getting free agents. We started making trades. We started getting to the playoffs. None of that happens without Bryce Harper. And let's get into his 2025 season, the quote-unquote not elite year from our beloved Dave Dombrowski. And I will be getting into that whole press conference and how I kind of feel that it's going to be a motivator, how I feel like it's going to attribute to a really good 2026 season, how I disagree with who said the message. It's like right message, wrong person. But in 2025, Bryce Harper hit .261 with 27 homers, a .357 on base percentage for an .844 OPS, 129 OPS plus in 132 games. So for all the notion of him kind of having a down year, it still was a phenomenal season. And he was battling injuries because in 24, he had the whole wrist thing to where he didn't really get it fixed in the offseason, but it was one of those weird injuries to where just time kind of heals and you can't really get surgery on it. It was very weird with all the injury reports coming out. It wasn't just like, okay, this is broken, it needs to get fixed, and this is the timetable for it to return. Because Bryce Harper would say, I would let it rest, I would let it heal, and it felt good, and then it would flare up again. So it did flare up in June because he was on the IL from June 7th to June 30th. So I believe he was playing through some pain. I think he was completely healthy to start the year, but the thing flared up again, the wrist or whatever it is, because I'm not a doctor. I have no idea what it truly was, but he missed some time. So he missed 30 games. So that's going to decrease the counting stats to where if he didn't miss those 30 games, maybe he's looking at a 33 homer season. But that's the counting numbers. Like an .844 OPS is not bad at all. Now, is it elite? It kind of is determined by your definition of elite. If you think elite's a top 10 player in Major League Baseball, then yes, he's not elite, but he's still a phenomenal talent at the first base position, batting third for you in your lineup. And I'm going to get into some other points of why I think some of his numbers were down, the constant need for a four-hitter, which we don't have, a possible lineup change to where Bryce Harper's not batting third for you. I got a couple different scenarios for you. But he missed some time. Post All-Star break, he had an .862 OPS, which was pretty good. Now, one stat that is kind of concerning is he only had a .762 OPS with runners in scoring position. Not bad, but not great. You expect Bryce Harper to be the guy that comes through when it matters most. He's one of the most clutch players of all time, one of the most clutch playoff performers of all time, but it dipped a little bit in 2025 and similar to that in the playoffs. Now, I attribute that to he had no protection. He had Alec Boehm batting four for you. Nick Castellanos spent some time in the four hole. JT spent some time in the four hole. He's not seeing the pitches that Kyle Schwarber was seeing. But we saw what that did for Kyle Schwarber when he went from 1 to 2. When he went from Trey Turner protecting him to when he had Bryce Harper protecting him. He had a career year, 56 homers, was second in National League MVP voting, to where Bryce Harper's chase rate was the highest of his career, 35.7. Now you say chase rate, I think Bryce Harper was pressing too much to where a lot of the Philadelphia Phillies players press too much, especially in October. They don't take what the pitcher's giving them. And I can see from both ends of the spectrum because Bryce Harper wants to be that guy. He wants to hit, but he's not seeing the pitches. So he kind of expands the zone a little bit and starts swinging at pitches that aren't really his pitches to hit instead of just taking his walks. Now you can always say Bryce Harper has a great eye. He needs to just take the walks. I get it. But at some point, it gets unbelievably frustrating because you know they're not attacking you similar to how they're attacking Kyle because you're hitting behind him. And then you got Bomer, Cassie, JT in the 4-hole, whoever. So I understand the chase rate, the higher percentage this year because Bryce Harper has always been an aggressive hitter, but he's very smart in when it's like controlled aggression. He kind of dipped away from that in 2025 to where I think when I get into the lineup prediction of where I want him to hit, I think that's going to change to where one, he's going to get more pitches to hit, and then he's going to cut down on his chase rate. And I think Bryce Harper might make an approach change a little bit to where he is getting older, right? Bryce Harper has had injury concern with his back, the wrist flaring up, and it's because Bryce Harper has one of the most violent swings in Major League Baseball to where he's trying to hit the ball like out of the ballpark, but not like in the sense of like homer or bust, just hit the ball as hard as he can and eventually get some backspin to where the ball goes out of the ballpark. I think Bryce Harper, if you remember, I believe it was in 23, 24. He kind of deviated away from this in 25. He had that two-strike swing approach to where he was just here. There was no leg kick. It was just a straight A, B to the ball. I think he's going to adjust a little bit because that'll do one of two things. One, it'll help him with his chase rate, simplify things to where he can see the pitch a little bit better. And then if he doesn't swing as hard as he can, that might help him with his longevity in his career because he can't maintain that same forceful swing that he's been doing since he was 16 years old because Father Time is undefeated to where I think maybe the power numbers dip a little bit, but the average gets up to over 300 and you see a true hitter instead of just a power hitter. Because Bryce Harper, he always has the power numbers, but he can always hit the doubles, he can hit the singles, the two-strike approach to where I think that's what he's going to do in 2026 to where it will lead to a better overall production while preserving his longevity. And then let's get into the playoffs because all I've heard about the playoffs with Bryce Harper is how he was bad, he wasn't successful, he didn't do what Bryce Harper needed to do. All of those statements are correct. He was bad in the playoffs. He batted 200, had a 600 OPS. That is not what you expect out of one of your best players. And if you have that production out of one of your best players, you're not going to get to the next round. You're going to lose in the first round like the Phillies did back-to-back years. So I don't disagree with the sentiment. I disagree with how much overblown it was to where I've seen so many comments, so many radio talk shows talking about how Bryce Harper, the last two postseasons, hasn't shown up. 2024, he was phenomenal against the New York Mets. He took his walks. He had the homer in game 2. He had the double in game 4 in the 6th inning when we were up 1-0. But guess who didn't drive him in? Casty, JT, Marsh or Stott, one of them. He did his job to where 2024, he had 1100 OPS. What are we talking about? Now, game 2025, he was bad, but it's a 4-game sample size. He has to be better, yes, because if Bryce Harper isn't Bryce Harper in 2026 in Red October, we're not going to go anywhere. But I think you cannot judge a guy on a 4-game sample size, especially with the postseason track record that he has. 2022, phenomenal. 2023, phenomenal. I get it, game 6 and game 7, but everyone shit the bed in game 6 and game 7. Bryce Harper needed his teammates to have his back for 2 games, and they couldn't do that. And then 2024, he was really good. The bullpen, the other hitters, it was a collective effort to where Bryce Harper is a playoff riser. He's one of the best playoff performers of all time to where he's going to return to that form. And I think some of these adjustments, in my opinion, with the lineup, with kind of his approach at the plate is going to lead to a elite season. And that'll segue right into this next part of the episode, Dave Dombrowski's non-elite comments to where when he made those comments, it was very shocking because Dave Dombrowski, what I give him credit for is he is phenomenal at the GM talk, of the president of baseball operations talk, not saying anything too scandalous, saying the quote unquote politically correct answer. So when he came out of nowhere and said about Bryce Harper not being elite, it kind of took everyone for surprise. And I think it took Bryce Harper for surprise because Bryce Harper in his head, is like, what the hell are you talking about, dude? How about I talk about your non-elite trade deadline acquisitions, your free agency signings? Why don't I say something about that? Bryce Harper will never say that, but I guarantee you that's what he was thinking internally. But the thing about Bryce Harper is he will take that and use it in a positive light. When Bryce Harper is motivated, my God, help the rest of the entire league. Let's just go back to Attaboy Harper. Like, yes, he made a base running mistake in game 2 to where he got doubled off, and then Arcia was running his mouth, and the rest is history. Like, a motivated Bryce Harper, because here's the thing, he's always going to put in the work. He's always going to be doing what needs to be done. But when he gets that little bit of an edge, because you got to think, this guy was 16 years old on the cover of Sports Illustrated, labeled the chosen one. He lives for this kind of stuff to where I think those comments are going to be positive. I'm happy they happened because I really think we're going to get a rejuvenated Bryce Harper to where he's going to return, not to his MVP form, because I think, like I said, he's going to change his approach a little bit, but I think we're going to see something special out of Bryce Harper. And to close off on the non-elite comments, I think it was the right message, wrong messenger. Because Dave Dombrowski, who the hell are you to tell Bryce Harper he's not elite? You have not been an elite president of baseball operations since you stepped foot in this organization. My timer. But I went a whole video on your deadline failures, 23, 24, your offseason moves, the contract you gave out to Nick Castellanos, the contract you gave out to Taijuan Walker. Who the hell are you, Dave Dombrowski? But this is a Bryce Harper episode. This is not a Dave Dombrowski episode because I'm kind of done with Dave, dude. Like, hopefully this is his last year in the organization. We get Preston Mattingly in there. And then what I think has led to Bryce Harper's slight decline, is he has no protection in the lineup. And this has been the case for year after year after year. Going back on Dave Dombrowski, you have not gotten Bryce Harper the protection he needed, and that is a failure on you and the entire Phillies organization. I get it. You tried to get Bo Bichette, but you didn't plan on getting Bo Bichette in the offseason. You thought he was going to fall into your lap to where he saw you guys out, and then you were like, okay, maybe we can make this work. I guarantee you the Phillies had no intention of signing Bo Bichette. It goes back to the philosophy. They had no intention of getting Bryce Harper protection. A real four-hitter. It's going to be Alec Bowman or a Dolis Garcia. That is so irresponsible as a franchise, as a team, to where you see the problem that's going year after year. Why are we not winning? Because the lineup is not deep enough to where the stars have to try to do too much. Schwarber tries to do too much. Turner tries to do too much. Harper tries to do too much, and then they end up doing nothing. Granted, you would like for the players to be like, take what they can give you. And yes, I agree with that, like, logically. But it's so hard when you're in that moment. Bryce Harper's up with runners on second and first, and he wants to come through. He needs to come through for the city because he knows the guy behind him, Alec Boehm, is going to ground out to third base to Miguel Rojas, which is exactly what happened. So what I am imploring the Philadelphia Phillies to do, and I think they will do this, I have two things to where I want Bryce Harper to bat in the lineup. One, I don't think is realistic because I don't think the Phillies are willing to do that. And really, I don't think Bryce Harper's willing to do it. And then I have a spot in the order where I think they are going to move him. In my ideal world, I want Bryce Harper to bat leadoff for the Philadelphia Phillies because I think with the way his approach at the plate is, he's the typical leadoff hitter. And we've seen superstars do it in Major League Baseball. Shohei Ohtani is the best player to ever step foot on the face of the earth, and he's batting leadoff for the Los Angeles Dodgers. That gives him the most plate appearances in the game because obviously leadoff, you hit the most. And then it just changes the entire game when Ohtani is coming up to the plate. Similar to when Kyle Schwarber was that leadoff hitter for the Phillies for 22, 23, and 24. It just changes the whole trajectory of the game to where if he sends one to the moon, you're already down 1-0, you're already down in a hole. And I just think Bryce Harper, if Trey Turner's batting second and then Kyle Schwarber's batting third, he has two guys ahead of him or behind him to where he doesn't have to do too much. He can take what the pitcher's giving him. If you want to walk Bryce Harper to start the game, great. You got Turner who could lace a single and it's first and third, nobody out for Kyle Schwarber. Or Bryce Harper might just send one to the moon, similar to what Kyle Schwarber did so many times when he was in the leadoff spot, to where it just makes too much sense to not have Bryce Harper in the leadoff spot. And I don't think they're going to do it. And honestly, I don't think Bryce Harper wants to do it because he's made it known he doesn't like batting leadoff. He likes batting third, but the way the team is constructed, I think you have to change it. If you got Bo Bichette, everything would have been fine. We didn't get Bo Bichette. So I don't think Bryce Harper's going to be leadoff. That's my ideal dream. Don't think it's going to happen, but I do think he's going to bat second, to where it's going to be Turner, Harper, Schwarber, because we saw what kind of production Schwarber had when he had Bryce Harper protecting him. Now I think it's fair to give Bryce Harper that opportunity that Kyle Schwarber got. Schwarber got his contract. He had his career year when they made the change, so he's locked up. So put Bryce second and put Kyle third, and I think that's what they're going to do. That'll do two things. One, obviously Bryce is going to see more pitches. It's going to eliminate his chase rate because he knows that there's going to be more pitches coming to him. And I think Kyle Schwarber is well equipped enough with the bat and his plate approach to kind of handle not having the protection that he deserves. I think Kyle Schwarber can handle that a little bit better because I do think Kyle Schwarber has a slightly better eye than Bryce Harper, and he's more, I don't want to say disciplined, but I will say disciplined to where he's just going to take what the pitcher gives him. So I really think they're going to make that change. And the thing about April and May is with the Philadelphia Phillies is it's a tryout period. It's, look, we haven't won in October. We haven't been successful. Let's just try these type of things. Now, if it happens to where Kyle's struggling, Bryce is struggling, then you adjust the lineup, right? But I think in the first few months of the season, they have to be willing to try anything because I think they're good enough to make the playoffs regardless, barring any injuries. But in the sense of you're going to get to October most likely, just see if this could fit. Because if Harper just starts going off in the 2-hole and Schwarber's production dips a little bit, but it's still similar to his 2025 form, that extends the lineup so much more than when it was against the Dodgers. And let's just get into his season predictions. So I think he's going to bat 310. I think he's going to be more of a singles, doubles hitters to where his average gets up, especially if he's in the 1 or 2 hole. I think he's going to have 33 homers, which is like kind of similar to his 2025 season where he had 27. But like I said, he missed 30 games. So I think his power numbers are going to stay relatively the same. I think he's going to have a 410 on base percentage. That's a massive rise from his 357 in 2025, just because I think with the protection, his chase rate's going to go down. He's going to take more of his walks, especially if he's batting 1 or 2 in the lineup to start the game. And then a 530 slugging and then have an OPS of 940. I think he's going to win a Gold Glove because Bryce Harper is a phenomenal defensive first baseman. I think he finished second or third the last couple of years, to where I think Bryce Harper is going to put it all together with the motivation and just be a complete player. Now, of course, all this is predicated on if he stays healthy, as is for any major league player. But with Bryce Harper's injury concern, we need a fully healthy season for these elite season to come to fruition. And I think he's going to finish third in NL MVP voting. Ohtani's going to win the MVP if he stays healthy because he pitches and hits. There's no discussion there. I think Soto is going to finish second because Juan Soto is a phenomenal baseball player, and he kind of struggled to start the year in 2025. Now, Juan Soto's struggles are some players' career years, to where a full season in the New York Mets organization, to where he's kind of adjusted, he's comfortable. I think Soto is going to have a massive year, and that's going to be tough because we're going to be battling with him and the Mets for the NL East, and then I think Bryce Harper finishes third. And then I think Bryce Harper is going to win the home run derby in Philadelphia. The All-Star game is in South Philly. I'll be there for that. And it just fits the narrative of he's a big-time, big-moment riser, to where, of course, he's going to win the home run derby. And I think he's going to win the All-Star game MVP. So I think Bryce Harper is going to have a phenomenal year. I think he's going to put the Philadelphia Phillies on his back, lead them to the playoffs, whether that's a NL East title to where they get the bye, or if it's a wild card, whatever it is, Bryce Harper is going to be extremely instrumental to what the Philadelphia Phillies do in 2026. And then it all gets predicated on the postseason. Because if he has a career year, I don't think he'll have a career year because what he did with the Nationals in 15 and the Phillies in 2021 was phenomenal. But if he has one of his best years, but he doesn't play well in October, then the narrative can start to shift to where, is Bryce Harper no longer a playoff riser? Because then it would be 2 years back to back. So as anything with this Philadelphia Phillies team, we're at that point to where it matters what you do in October 1,000 times more than what you do in the regular season. Because we've already been there in the regular season. We've already got to the playoffs. But everyone and their mothers are going to be judged on what we do in October. Now, the season is still very valuable because you have to get into the dance. Nothing is guaranteed, especially with baseball when injuries can happen. So the 2026 regular season is extremely important. But again, everything gets predicated on Red October. And I think Bryce Harper is going to take the WBC to start off, have that energy, have that rejuvenation, have a phenomenal 26 season, and then use that into the playoffs to where it will be so fitting to where everyone's like, writing him off, be like, is he at the later stages of his career? And then he goes on a playoff run, and we're down Broad Street, and Bryce Harper is labeled the greatest Philadelphia Philly of all time. But that'll do it for this episode of Baseball for Maniacs. Let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments. What do you expect out of Bryce Harper in the 2026 season? Do you think the non-elite comments were correct? Do you think he's going to use that for his motivation? Do you think Bryce Harper is heading towards the end of his career? Like, what do you guys think? Because I'd love to get your opinion. My opinion on Bryce Harper is he's the greatest Philadelphia Philly of all time. He's nowhere near done. He's going to have a phenomenal 2026 season, and we're going to be partying down Broad Street in November. God willing. Go Phils, and you guys have a good one.